Is it too late to invest in crypto?
If you've got any curiosity about crypto or any inkling or it's been on your to-do list, this is absolutely the time to look at it and get educated, because this is a unique window of time in history in our lives.
Happy New Year and welcome back to the Uncharted Territory podcast. In today's episode, we're going to be looking at the question of, is it too late to invest in crypto? We've seen massive gains in the price of Bitcoin over the last 12 months, and people are already exploring, have they missed the window? Is it going to continue to grow? What's going to happen? What's the prognosis? And of course, it's that time of year when people are setting financial goals. It's New Year's resolution time. And looking ahead, we want to assess what's the opportunities. Is there a potential bull run coming forward? And has the window been missed? And what is the longer term opportunities that are available? We're going to assess all of this in today's conversation and more. So sit back and enjoy. Welcome back to our first episode of the Uncharted Territory podcast with myself and Sam. So Sam, Happy New Year to you. Good to be back.
Happy New Year, Dan. Happy New Year to everybody out there. And yeah, 2024 is here. Lots going on. Again, a lot of confusion with what's happening in the world, but we're here to demystify that. Particularly when we look at the financial markets, crypto markets, and an awful lot going on in the crypto markets. A lot of exciting things going on. I think it's really important that we shine a light on it so people get clear, because people often don't know where the markets are, therefore they don't know whether to get in, get out. I think knowing where you are is always the best starting point, and having a look at it. We're going to look at that with a few charts today as well and talk around the whole topic then.
Yeah, well, I'm going to start off by sharing my own FOMO, because we know market is moved by psychology, and FOMO, if you didn't, if you're not down with the kids, means fear of missing out. And Bitcoin, after the back of the FTX news, plummeted and hit a new low. And for many people, as always, the headlines that it's over for Bitcoin, it's over for crypto, and these dramatic headlines caused this plummeting in the price. But you and I have a longer term perspective and a much more bullish outlook on the future of Bitcoin and crypto in general. Despite that, though, Sam, I didn't have the capital at the time to invest further into Bitcoin, and I look back and I'm seeing the price and kicking myself that I didn't release capital from other sources to invest, and because I knew my intuition and my outlook with all the data that I look at here shows that this was going to grow, and if I'd put money in at that point, obviously I would have seen a real growth. So from a personal perspective, I'm thinking, well, there's a missed opportunity. Is it too late? Have I missed the window? And we're going to look at that today. And again, long term, I'm confident in the growth, and it's just an early stage. But let's explore that in the context of Bitcoin and other assets. So
I think it's important, Dan, because there'll be a lot of people in that same position. There'll be a lot of people with those same thoughts. I know people with those thoughts. We've had people on our own Navigate Financial Reset call last night with those own thoughts where they've waited, been hesitant, and again because they're learning and they're not quite sure yet. But often what we see is that then prices start to rise and they get caught in, am I too late? Should I? And I think it's important to look at that and explore that to get out the confusion so you can have some clarity.
But also, the point there as well is when that price starts to rise, it creates that proof point that then inspires action. And I don't think we're at the point yet where the Uber drivers are talking about Bitcoin like they were during the last bull run. But that's, to me, is a real indicator when your uncle or your dentist or your taxi driver is talking about, are you in Bitcoin yet, and things like that. I don't think we've reached that point of the hype curve, but I don't think we're going to be far off. But what normally happens, and we've seen this, is that once that price starts to rise, that's when people start to get excited. However, as we've talked about multiple times, is understanding the cycles and understanding where we are is so important, because the bear market is really the time to accumulate assets. And that's why I had the FOMO. I've spent the last 3 years essentially as a full-time activist. My old business has been parked, and I've lived on much more frugal means, and as a result I've not had the available assets to invest at the level I'd like to in these things. So one of my New Year's resolutions is to regain that focus on capital accumulation so that I can invest in these things and really take my business seriously again going into 2024, because I see a long-term opportunity here. And I think the message I want to get across to people is, again, if you've got the resources, now's the time to really take it seriously. But if you don't, it's now the time also to take it seriously so that you can actually produce the type of income that can enable you to enter into the market. And one of the most exciting things to me about this, and we've talked about it, is that no matter what level of income or assets you have right now, even making small incremental investments in this asset class could have a major payoff for you over the long term. And I want to explore all of that, Sam, because it's very hard for people to get their head around that with what's happening in the market right now, where it is with the current position versus where it was at its low point, and where it could go from here. So
100% Dan, and I just want to say, if you've got any curiosity about crypto or any inkling or it's been on your to-do list, this is absolutely the time to look at it and get educated, because this is a unique window of time in history in our lives, and this opportunity in the way it's presenting itself at the moment may well not come again in this form. And exactly as you said, Dan, what's so interesting about it, it is an asset class that you could not have to expose yourself, in a large financial position to really get good gains. And that's why it's so interesting to look at, and I think it's paramount when you understand that this asset class has a volatility and moves very quickly because it's small, and that's why. But when you understand that and you understand why it's volatile and how you can benefit from that change, rather than being scared of that, you understand why that's a huge opportunity, and again, with the barriers to entry currently being very low, almost non-existent, as long as you get your money out of the bank, and we talk about that in our course, and how they are the biggest barrier because they want to keep you in that old fiat system. Once you can get in there, this is a window that is potentially closing. So now is the time to really understand it, and if you want to grab this opportunity and do well.
Yeah, there's a couple of things I want to add to that. So the barriers to entry are low, yes, in terms of the banks are allowing it. They're making it increasingly harder, and the irony of some of the major players in the traditional banking world, their words of warning against crypto over the last 5 years, and now they're leading lights in the bull market. The irony of that is not lost on me, but there is still some technical barriers. It's and this is a reflection of the adoption curve, because, and your point around this is a once in a lifetime. I was alive during the dot-com bubble, and as a very young, and I wasn't in a position to capitalize on what was happening during that time. But this is, to me, is the equivalent. It's the next technological leap, which is why it's such a unique moment in history. And it's been over 30 years now since that explosion of new technology.
Yeah.
So again, it could happen again within our lifetimes. Technology is evolving at such a rapid pace, but this is here and now. And getting your head around what's beyond Bitcoin is key, because this to me is another part of the answer of, is it too late? Because we can look at Bitcoin in isolation, which we'll do in a moment, but it's just it's understanding what it represents as a technological class now. And how blockchain, Web3 is literally transforming the world of digital. And if you think about it, how many businesses, how much of our lives now is built on technology, and it's an older technology set now, how much of that will now get replaced over time? And I worked in the world of marketing technology for a while, and the technology, there's this term in the business world of rip and replace. So you would rip out your old tech stack and you would replace it with a new one, because it's evolved and it's more effective, it's more innovative, it can enable you to do more things. And that term is really powerful now, because almost every industry is going to be exposed to this, and this old technology stack will be ripped out and replaced by a new decentralized blockchain-based tech in so many. And it doesn't stop there. With every innovation, there's always then new innovations on the back of those innovations. Now, of course, we're at an age where probably many of us are thinking, well, we're becoming too dependent on technology as a human species, and that's a philosophical argument that we will grapple with. But we'll leave that. We'll park that for today. But nonetheless, this technological shift is happening, and it's happening now. And this is why the parallels of the dot-com bubble is so key, because so much innovation occurred off the back of that time, and you can see the long tail of that now, and we're really at the early stages. So when people look back and say Bitcoin 2009, 2010, 2011, it feels like a long time ago now, but really it's the last decade has been the groundwork for that cycle, and we're still in that early stage of development. So that's why it's so exciting. But 2024 to me, Sam, feels like a pivotal year. It feels like there's going to be a tipping point.
Absolutely, Dan. And we are, it's happening in real time. So a lot of people don't realize this technology shift is happening. Industries are beginning to be disrupted. Things are changing under the surface, under the bonnet, so to speak. So a lot of people have no awareness of crypto, and you alluded to the kind of big players and the kind of nonsense they've been spreading. They've done an amazing job at creating the confusion and the general feeling in the mainstream that this is a scam and a fad. Okay, and we had the very glaring example of Santander blocking clients moving their funds in for their own safety whilst helping their private clients in Switzerland purchase crypto assets, the very same crypto assets they're protecting the retail investor from. But then equally, somebody you quite rightly railed against in our previous podcast, Jamie Dimon, one of the top guys at JP Morgan, who only last month called Bitcoin a scam, no better than the I mean, I can't even remember the exact words, but it was a complete tirade against Bitcoin and said if he was part of the government...
He called it a hyped-up fraud.
A hyped-up fraud. And if he was part of the government, he'd suggest banning it, getting rid of it,
Worse than
outlawing
tulips,
it.
He said.
Yeah, that's one. Worse than tulips. And of course, it's all games and theatre, and it's very powerful because, we looked at just this week, his firm, JP Morgan, have just been confirmed as the official partners of some of the big investment companies who are starting their Bitcoin spot ETFs, their exchange traded funds. So completely in bed with this huge shift into Bitcoin by the institution. So it always just says that their whole way of doing things is do as we say and not as we do. They and I see it in real time out there, Dan. Whether it's clients of mine trying to who've got educated about crypto, they want to have conversations about it, not promoting, but now they've understood it through getting educated. They want to share, well, this is what's going on. The responses they get from people are extraordinary, and again, I don't blame you, but they've been socially engineered to be absolutely terrified of it, to believe it's just a get rich quick scheme that you'll lose your money in. They've got no education, but that's the fear and what they're projecting. So all it does to me is prove that in terms of the masses and the mass, social engineering, they have succeeded in keeping most people away from this market because they believe it's a scam, a fraud, and you'll lose all your money. Whilst they are building the blocks and they are absolutely sweeping up as many assets as they can. So it's the old classic double move. And you just see the fear in people's faces, and it's almost like it's become the C word. It's almost become like the COVID word, Daniel. Crypto, there's this fear, and really, or as I say to people, what should you be worried about? Should be worried about the F word, fiat.
Yes.
Know where you are and know what the real threat is and what's really a danger to be involved in and overexposed to. So again, it's this classic one: education changes everything. Get educated. We had on our call last night, Dan, a lot of people said through getting educated with us over a period, their whole view of things has shifted. Now, where they go, that education, as we always say, is a sovereign path, and it has to fit with them. There's no right way, but getting educated just changes where you are and how you see things completely. And your reaction to different asset classes or different options is transformed by just understanding what's going on and what's really happening, as the big players do understand.
Yeah,
but
and
they're going to tell you something different.
Yeah, however you dice this up, the question is it too late? I mean, the thing is, within the macro picture you alluded to there, the world is changing, the landscape is changing. 2024, are we going to see more central bank digital currencies introduced? Yes, we will. Go to cbdctracker.org. Go and look at the progress of these things. Now, the UK government is investing in further consultations into the digital pound. These things are on the horizon. And the F word you mentioned, the fiat currency, I mean, that's the world, that's the tide. Sadly, you see the tsunami in Japan, how it just swept over the coastline here. The tsunami is coming in the financial world. So if you're concerned about that path of the central bank digital currencies, understanding alternative pathways, which I always remind people that the origins, not just, I mean, you could go into a purist conversation about who really created Bitcoin and is it DARPA? I mean, let's be honest, most technologies DARPA have had a role in anyway. It's the web, like you're using the internet. The DARPA probably had their hand in most of the digital technologies today, these defense, but let's put that aside for now.
Well, we shouldn't have this conversation, Dan, because we're using the internet. If we're using the internet level, because there was some money, and again, we also talk about you said it. You've said it very well often, Dan, that there are many reasons not. You can always find a reason not to do something.
Absolutely, but my point is
that you're negating some of the benefits or the improvements and again, I'm not looking for panaceas. I'm looking to improve situations so we can build more resilience, have more options. Are you be better positioned? You're never going to be perfectly positioned. And that's almost like a fallacy of being alive and being in this world, I'd argue. But you can be better positioned and more educated and use the tools, for good purposes.
Definitely. But my point around that, Sam, is that even if they do have their hand in parts of this, there's so much innovation now within this decentralized space. And I think what most of our audience would agree upon is that the centralized nature of our world right now is one of the biggest parts of the problem that we're facing. Therefore, any tool or technology or solution that enables us to decentralize and to have greater sovereignty, greater freedoms, greater custody over our finances is a good thing.
And what's just got to be, Dan, sorry, just is the greatest irony is, what do we absolutely know is created and controlled by the power structure being run against is their fiat currency.
Yes.
So if you want to say, I don't want to touch anything that may have some involvement, then you need to get rid of all of that right away now, because there's no debate about that. That's not a maybe. That's an absolute certainty.
Yes.
Created out of thin air, controlled, manipulated, and is a great tool of control. So that's where you have to get that way up.
Yes, but the reason I bring this up, because I know we've talked about it extensively on the podcast, and we don't want to. It's easy for us to talk about this and get heated and passionate about this subject because we deal with it every single day. But the truth is, as you said, the centralized system is changing, and it's gaining power and it's gaining momentum, and the technology stack of blockchain could enable that central bank digital currencies and all the ISO regulations we've talked about to accelerate. So there's the market dimension of, is it too late to invest, which we'll look at in a moment. Look at the charts of Bitcoin as a leading indicator. But there's also the economic and political story. So, central bank digital currencies aren't here yet in most of the Western world, but they're on the way. It will be too late once they do arrive. Even then, we're creative. People will always find a path. So, to what extent that will be true is debatable. But we know once they arrive, it's going to be increasingly hard to get out of that matrix-style system. So what we want to do now is prepare ourselves for how that's coming. So whether you're looking at this from a financial opportunity for yourself, to create a new wealth, as you would of any other investment class, or whether you're looking to decentralize your holdings, whether you're looking to fight back against the current system, the question is this too late? No. To me, the answer is no. This is just getting started. The opportunities are profound. Now, of course, with any investment, because you have to consider it as an investment, comes with risk. However, with any investment class, you're going to identify your financial goals, you're going to look at your risk profile, and you're going to make decisions accordingly. So that aside, when we look at where we are in the marketplace, it's really important to understand where we are in the cycles so that you can see where we are and be able to navigate where you're ahead. And we plan to show some of the charts, Sam. Is now a good time for us to have a look at?
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to highlight, I'm really glad you brought those two key tenets, Dan. The two tenets are, this is a great opportunity to grow your wealth and also to decentralize your value. So those two things together, and again, they're both helpful things. Either one on their own is an improvement, but both together is great, because what we're talking about is you don't want to get your wealth trapped in that old system that's going to be switched over to CBDC, or is much more controlled and centrally stored if you've got it in the banks or in the legacy system. So you've got a growth area, and you've also got an area where you take control of it, the self-custody aspect, and decentralized outside the legacy system. So those two things together is a real powerful combination. And I always say, it doesn't mean you move everything, but you have that extra option. Also, you've got an extra tool. You've got some assets. You've improved your situation. You are more decentralized. I always say, are you more decentralized this week than last week? Then you made improvement. Doesn't mean you have to go all in anywhere, and you shouldn't do. You should diversify. But when you understand those two benefits, that's a great improvement on your situation. And so looking at the power of those tools is what's really important to improve your situation. So you're better positioned, not because you've then found the ultimate purpose, because it doesn't exist. There's risk in everything. And I'm glad you said that, because this is what people say, it's risky. Do you understand the risks of where you are?
Yeah.
The greatest risk can be doing nothing and staying in an old paradigm. And that's arguably where the system, the power brokers want you to be. They're always, all their moves show they want you to stay where you are, stuck in an old paradigm, whilst they are quickly moving themselves.
Yes.
They are moving ahead of time. If you get educated, you can move ahead of time. And that's the beauty of getting educated and looking at things created.
Yeah, and if you want greater clarity on that, look at our last episode when we look at the difference between smart money and retail investors. It makes such a difference. And the third dimension to this, Sam, is also on that point, is then wealth protection. or asset protection, protecting the funds you have. People shy away from the word wealth. Just looking at your assets, because your point there. Last year was a hugely inflationary year. The headlines were dominated by cost of living crisis, inflation, interest rate rises, which means there's a net loss on your. If you're holding your money in cash or currency, there's likely to be a net loss on what you're holding. Whereas now, Bitcoin and other assets like this are being seen like in the same way as gold, as a digital form of hedging inflation. That there's the long term patterns are yet to play out, but we're already seeing that move. We're seeing people moving into digital assets, Bitcoin, etc., to hedge against inflation, because of course you're losing money every single day in inflation. We've talked about this extensively. So
and the numbers there are start down when we did them. It's important to reiterate them. In the last 2 years, they did, 50 grand a bank is now 43 grand.
It's crazy.
If you had 100 grand a bank, then you've got double that. I think you're down to 86. Okay. And so that's the volatility that's happening, and that's guaranteed. So people go, I'm worried about whether Bitcoin goes up or down in the short term. Well, I'm telling you that your bank account is going down.
Yes.
And that I can guarantee that's going to continue. Where the other asset classes have volatility, but have uptrends and growth in them. So it's understanding the comparison. It's always not looking at things in isolation, understanding the differences and the qualities.
And this is all about financial education literacy, Sam, because it ain't taught in schools. No. I'm looking at my son as a 2-year-old thinking, well, firstly, he isn't in the education system yet, but how can I help him unlearn what he's learning in schools? Part of my goal for the next few years in generating my own path towards wealth is I want to be able to invest in education, alternative education. I want to help transform that space, because I don't think it's serving the youth of today. That's a whole separate subject that we won't sideline on. But my point around this is that in the context of this conversation is the education system does not teach young people, how to manage their money. It doesn't teach you the principles of money. It doesn't even studying economics at GCSE level. A little bit it showed the game, but the game is not made clear, and the risks of maintaining the status quo are not made clear. So a lot of this is about financial education to understand where you are so you can make informed decisions. And that's how we can help transform and help people move towards financial independence. Because ultimately what this, to me, part of the reason we're doing this education is for sovereignty purposes. It's to give people greater agency, autonomy, and financial independence. And, financial independence is similar but different to financial freedom. Financial independence has a dynamic of you being in control of your financial resources and destiny. Financial freedom as an alternative is almost that level where you have FU money. Like you have the kind of assets that you can live a lifestyle where you never have to think about any decision. But financial independence can offer that. But really it's about having that sovereign custody of your finances and feeling in control of your financial decisions.
And the first really powerful step of that, Dan, is taking back your mind from the narratives. As we talked about, what narratives they put out there, that all these people are, believing that it's all a scam and a fraud and there's no point going into it and lose all my money, and the people who got educated are in have a totally different viewpoint experience. So independence from being manipulated, as we talk, taking back your mind and getting your own good info and understanding is what frees you from really being manipulated on so many levels psychologically. And that goes across the board, whether it's finance, health, everything, full spectrum, isn't it, Dan? That's really coming back to ourselves and getting good info and not being corralled by social engineering.
Absolutely. So on that point, take a look at the link in the comments. We've got a link to our digital assets course, Navigating the Digital Assets course, in the comments. That's a 3-hour program, a 3-module program that will give you the fundamentals of this space, getting educated in this space. There's only so much we can cover in a podcast like this, and we will continue to put out free information, but that course there will help you understand the basics. So take a look at that. Now, let's look at the market moves, because coming back to the question, is it too late to invest from the perspective of where the market is? Let's take a look at Bitcoin as a leading indicator. Talk us through what we're seeing here, Sam.
So here we're seeing basically what we got there is the last year view in Bitcoin. We got the last 5-year view. So you're seeing the last bull market, these big spikes up here, and recently, so you see that top there down in 2021 there. You see that was the top at $69,000. Okay, the peak of the last bull market, and that bull market really, if we look back where it began, Dan, was 2020. Was the COVID time. That's the COVID crash you just rolled on there, going up there. And again, when you understand cycles and why that happened, what did we have through COVID? Massive amount of money printing, shut down the economy, furlough stimulus, huge amounts of money printing. Therefore, the value of the dollar going down and people moving to the asset side of the equation. So again, as I teach in my course, Dan, that you alluded to there, I show about the inverse relationship between the strength of the dollar and the crypto markets. Because when you understand how markets move, it's no longer such a gamble or a mystery. And just I bought, they have no idea. You understand that these things have cycles. You understand that when quantitative easing comes in, that it's better to be on the asset side of the equation. And so that can really change your whole experience. So what we see there is that bull, and then we see the last 2 years from that peak has been a bear market, where we went down from 69,000 down to the bottom there. Down, I think you highlight there is where we had the collapse of FTX on the eclipse on the 7th of November 2022, and Bitcoin there was around $15,500. Okay, so down from a peak of 69,000 to $15,000. And those falls is where you get in the mainstream media the stories like the Economist cover, I think, was the death of crypto, down, it's the end. But that's just a normal bear market. Okay, Bitcoin was in March 2020 around $3,000. It climbs to $69,000 and it retraces, so it gets overbought, overheated, and then it retraces down to $15,000. That's still 5x up from where it was in March 2020.
Yes.
So there's still a huge growth curve. So even if you've ridden that whole bull market up and ridden it down to the bottom of the next bear market, you were still 5 times up in your purchasing power against whether you'd stayed in fiat currency and you may be down 30-40%. So again, that's what's really interesting in the mainstream. People are scared, think, I'm glad I didn't buy Bitcoin, glad I wasn't in crypto, everyone's lost all their money. That's not the reality if you understand the charts and what's gone on. But what we've got from there, Dan, is we've had this 2-year period where we bottomed there at around $15,000. It's been trading between sort of 15 and 30 for this, 15 and 25, 26 for a couple of years. And now look what we can see, the bull market coming back in. Okay. And things have spiked very quickly and we're back around that 40 to 45,000 mark.
I'll just show that in the 1 year so you can see that growth.
Get that.
Yeah.
So really we start to break out of this bear market cycle. And Dan, I don't know if we can look at the all time to put that in perspective. If we can look at that in the all time in logarithmic, there we go. So you can see this is the whole process going back to 2012 on this chart. You see all those bull markets and bear markets, okay, and you can see the growth curve over time within them, and you can see that we're starting to leave this current bear market, and things move very quickly. So understandably, the smart money being accumulated. The people understand crypto, understand the cycles have been accumulated in the last 2 years because they understand the bull market will come back. No one knows exactly when, but they know it will. But what happens is people don't have that belief or awareness. They wait because the manipulators have told you it's ending, it's going to zero. That's happened in every bear market. You get overexcitement at the top where they're saying, get in now, it's going to go to hundreds of thousands, and you get over fear push at the bottom. So what that often leads to is retail investors or people not educated buying the tops of bull markets because that's when, as you said, Dan, the cabbies speak about it. Your granny's ringing up saying, get me some Bitcoin. All the naysayers and the skeptics who said, I'm not getting involved, all want to get involved. That's when they buy the top of the market. And then when it goes into a bear market, very normal, starts cooling off, they get scared and they get convinced it's going to go to zero, they're going to lose everything, and they sell the bottom. So they can always say, well, I lost my money in crypto. Well, if you understand what's going to go on, you could have just held that to the next cycle and you've done really well. So I always give the example, Dan, back there in 2017, a lot of retail investors were new because it was a real hype cycle. 2017, late there in 2017, you see a peak there. A lot of people bought that peak because it was really Bitcoin and getting into the mainstream news. And then, there was a bear market after that. There was around the peak. And a lot of people watch their portfolios in either in Bitcoin or other altcoins, maybe drain 80 to 90% over the next 2 years. Now, again, the same narrative would have been around. It's over. I'm going to sell. If you'd sold there, you would have realized a loss. Absolutely. But the people who understood, hang on, I've just bought the top of a bull market. There's growth over time and I just hold on. Those same people by November 2021, Dan, some of them were 10 to 20x up on their portfolios, just with patience and sticking in and getting educated. So again, getting out of the emotion, the fear, and understanding what's going on means you can do well. I always say this: people who bought solid assets, got educated, had patience, learn how to take it in your own self-custody, have never lost any money in crypto. Quite the opposite. They've increased their wealth exponentially and done very well. So again, getting out of the sort of hyperbole and the stories of, oh, my son's, cousin, lost all his money in crypto, so don't do it. My father-in-law did this. I hear these stories all the time, but I can always say, well, tell me the story and we'll explain what's happened. And there's always a clear rationale of what's happened, and there's a clear rationale if you got educated why that wouldn't need to happen and why you could do well. So coming back today, Dan, you're absolutely right. We're there at around 45,000. The reason there's so much excitement as well is because we're on the verge of all these spot exchange traded funds being launched on Bitcoin, which has never happened before, which essentially is all the big players coming to the Bitcoin space. Okay. And it not coming to it sovereign way, coming through big investment firms like Grayscale, BlackRock, Fidelity, all these huge investment fund managers launching a spot exchange traded fund. And a spot exchange traded fund, literally, we've done a whole episode on it, Dan. So I would say go and look at that if you're confused by that. It means that these investment funds have to actually buy Bitcoin off the market for their clients. So we know that the Bitcoin supply is limited. That's a key point about sound money. Why the comparison between Bitcoin and Bitcoin is so important is that you've got a limited supply. Scarcity is what means you hold value and grow in value. And yet this supply is diminishing and it's in lots of people's hands, but there's a lot of extra buy pressure coming to this market. So that's been a leading narrative that's took us from sort of 25,000 to 45,000. And so really we're beginning this bull market. We're in bull market terms. And that doesn't mean it just goes up only. We can have dips. A lot of people don't realize that in that last bull market from 2020, from $3,000 up to $69,000, there would have been on their way lots of 20, 30% dips on the way. Nothing goes up in a straight line. That's very normal. But the overall sentiment is bullish. It means there are more buyers and sellers in the market. There's liquidity flowing in. And that's also due to what's happening in the macro picture, Dan, which is money printing, liquidity cycles coming back in. So it's not just isolated to crypto. This is what's happening in terms of liquidity in the world. And, we know that a lot more money's been printed, a lot more money coming around the market. So we're in that bull phase. And you're absolutely right. The question is, am I too late? Well, I always say you can look at it in a short term and a longer term. Okay. This market is the baseline technology market of the future. All the big players in the world understand that. So right now, the market is 1.8 trillion, Dan, in total volume, and Bitcoin's about 800 billion of that. So almost half the market is Bitcoin. Now see how quickly that's grown, because at the bottom of the bear market, it was down to about 800 billion total. So we've already gone up. We've already more than doubled the market in the last few months. But that's what happens in this space, why the growth is so extraordinary, because we're in a tiny asset class that is the baseline take of the future. So although the roadmap is not clear, no one can say exactly how it's going to play out. The only thing I'm extremely confident of, and anybody who's involved in crypto, is that this market will go to 5 trillion, 10 trillion, 20 trillion, 30 trillion over the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years onwards. Therefore, are you too late in the long term? Absolutely not. Are you too late in this bull cycle? I'd argue no. Because, often if we look back, if you look at the all-time charts there, Dan, again, we can put that in log scale. There we go, logarithmic. You can see that the exponential growth over time. So although we're having these bull markets and bear markets, each time we're going higher. There's more liquidity, there's more growth in this asset class. So if you understand that, then yes, you didn't buy the bottom of the bear market, but very few people do. The more clued up, you might start to understand a few cycles. Hang on, where it's really scaring the market, it's a good time to accumulate. But in terms of that, there is huge growth coming in this market. And again, if you can allocate some funds that you can lock in there, taking yourself custody when you've got educated about, properly controlling your own assets, not leaving in third-party hands, then there's huge opportunity. And I think from an investment point of view, Dan, it's important to realize that, half the market is Bitcoin, but there's a whole emerging world of altcoins, and it's vast. And the reason a lot of people look at that from an investing point of view is that should, Bitcoin go in this next cycle to potentially 150, 200,000, very possible. No one knows. Maybe it goes to 100,000. If it goes to 150,000, that is, about 3.5x from where we are today. Just based on the amount of liquidity that comes in this market, a lot of the smaller assets will do 5, 10, 20, 50, 100 X's. Okay. So the further down you go in terms of the size of asset within this market class, that you could argue the risk is higher. It's, it's a less mature asset. but also the return on investment is much higher, because Bitcoin has already had, over 13 years of growth. Is already a large asset in terms of approaching $1 trillion. When you're looking at assets that are valued at, 100 million, even $1 billion, they have much more growth in them. So what's investment about is looking for growth. And so there is extraordinary growth in these small assets simply because they are small and it doesn't take as much money to move them. So already what's interesting, Dan, is that a lot of the altcoin projects, and as Bitcoin's done this 3x from 15,000 to 45,000, a lot of them have already done 5, 6, 7x's from their bear market lows. Now, some people might argue, well, I think it's too late. But what they don't understand, unless you got educated in the full bull market cycle, a lot of those assets will go on to do 20, 30, 40 times their value. So therefore, yes, you missed the absolute bottom, but this is just the beginning of a bull market. And usually a bull market takes about 12 to 18 months to play out. So we are still very early indeed. And when you look at those charts, yes, there's an uptick, but a lot of these things are so far off, their all-time highs and where they're going to go in this next bull market, where they are today. So is it too late? Absolutely not at all. The opportunity is absolutely vast. And again, I think it's important to understand that this could be the last bull market that has such increased growth, such easy, access for people to come in with a small amount of money. The banks, with regulation, things may change rapidly in terms of the next cycle. So this cycle is a real window of opportunity that if you're interested in this market, want to get educated, now is the time to do it. Because a lot of people can say, well, I'm waiting for lower prices, maybe it comes back down again. Absolutely, that could happen. We could get a correction back down to, mid 30,000s. Altcoins could come down a little bit. But the danger is this market can get away from you so quickly. So people are waiting on the sidelines, but you could wake up tomorrow and Bitcoin's 50K, 55K. And then as you explained there, what happens, Dan, is the FOMO kicks in and people wait and wait and wait. And they buy when they've really got confirmation bias, which is when they start buying near the tops of the markets. Now, if you've got patience, that's all fine, because you can, for the longer term, you can hold. But in terms of making the most of this bull market, if you're interested, it's worth getting educated and taking action sooner rather than later.
Yeah, thanks, Sam. I'd like to share one more chart here just to offer a parallel, because I think what's important to recognize this pattern. This is the Apple stock price over time. So we talked about the dot-com bubble. You can see the Apple stock price going way back to the 80s. Okay, so if you zoom out and see the all-time view, it looks like there's very stable performance. Again, if we were to zoom in on each year, you would see your fluctuations. But then look, from the early 2000s, this exponential growth. This is in real terms. The price of Apple stock. Let's go and see. 1st of January 2020. $2. $1 to $2. Look at it now. The 1st of January 2024. Let's see if we can get that there. 2nd of Jan, that'll do. 184. Super growth. And then if we look at that on the logarithmic scale, the same story emerges, because look at this growth over time, despite what looked like, and the logarithmic scale just shows us change over time. Obviously there's this sideways movement here, but if you actually look at the overall trend, you get this, the dot-com bubble in the 90s, all of a sudden this exponential growth, so you could say, if you look at Apple, is it too late to invest in Apple? Okay, if you're going back to the price scale, clearly, if you'd put your life savings in Apple in the 80s and held it, my goodness, that's take that long-term view. You would have made significant gains over that time.
Absolutely, Dan. And some of those little dips in the early, the early pioneering phase, which is where we are in crypto. Almost like we talk about the tech revolution of the internet. Was the launch of apps in 2008 to where we are today. Unbelievable growth, transformed the way we transact, do business. We are in the age where this is the beginning of dApps.
Yes.
Decentralized applications, which is what a lot of crypto is essentially, is decentralized applications. Okay. It's the next iteration, it's the Web3 iteration of apps. Now that growth from 2008 you showed there to today, unbelievable. That's the growth cycle we're at the beginning of in crypto. So when the Economist announced, the death of crypto, really what was is the birth. It's the beginning.
Yes.
And then a lot of people would have sold out the dot-com bubble when it burst, and 95% down, left the market. Was it the end? No, it's the beginning. And the other point I want to make, Dan, is that a lot of these assets are, have utility, are going to be the building blocks of future ecosystems, value ecosystems for all sorts of purposes across the world. But in a bull market phase as we're in now, And this is what we're really going to focus. We're going to do a workshop next week, Dan, on looking at different assets and strong assets within, because there's so much within crypto. It's confusing. Looking at really strong assets, weighing up their potentials and how you might want to be positioned and how you might want to build a portfolio around some of them. Because in a bull market, all ships rise with the tide.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of people aren't aware, Dan, that they just think, okay, which one I buy, that one might go up, that one might go down. Now, in general, in this phase, there's so much liquidity moving this market that, some will rise more than others, but generally, and I mean this, even absolute utter crap can do incredibly well in bull markets. Now, is that a solid investment for the long term? Potentially not. But it's just understanding that, and that's not to advocate just buy whatever. It's good to get educated, and that's what we're going to look at the workshop. It's going to make you really empowered by understanding how you can build a portfolio that really evens out the risk-reward ratios. But it's to understand that Bitcoin's entering the market, the liquidity flows in, all ships rise with the tide. We're talking about liquidity coming in and rising all ships. What makes it longer term through utility and real growth is a kind of another story. But in short term, sort of bull market phases, understanding that's really important. I'd often show that, Dan, don't we? We do courses show that Bitcoin has a dip, everything moves with it within reason. You get some outliers. So when you get a better clear of how the crypto market moves, it changes your experience of it. And it also changes how you experience investing for a bull market and how you want to maximize it. So that's what we're going to look at in depth next week. And that's going to be really powerful for anybody who's either already invested, has a portfolio and is a bit confused about, the coming bull market and what they want to look out for, or people at the beginning of their journey thinking, well, I want to get involved, I'm ready to get involved, but I want to understand the parameters and what I might get involved with. That's really what to shine light on, so that the people who are keen to get educated can make the most of this opportunity ahead.
Yeah, so this workshop you're talking about is happening on Wednesday live, the 10th of January between 7 and 9 p.m., which crypto assets to buy. As Sam mentioned, he's going to be talking through as part of this. And we run these sessions every month. So this is part of our Navigating the Financial Reset program. You can get tickets, standalone tickets to this event. They're just £10. Or if you'd like to join the program, it's £20 per month. And you can join all of the calls and get over 20 modules and workshops that we've hosted over the last 12 months. So we invite you to come along to that. You can go to weareelevate.org/what should you buy. That's weareelevate.org/what should you buy. You'll see the link in the description of this episode as well. As we mentioned, if you're brand new to this field and all the jargon is overwhelming, the digital assets course that I mentioned earlier on, Navigate Digital Assets, will give you the fundamentals. It will teach you the good, the bad, and the ugly. It's a self-study program. You can go through that. So there's a couple of options for you there, and you'll see the links to both in the comments. You mentioned, Sam, in the closing gambits there, the tide rises with Bitcoin, and the same is true in tech stocks. They call it the Magnificent Seven. We're looking at Apple just now, and you can see the role that those biggest 7 assets have on the overall markets. So it's understanding the fundamentals and the principles of investing. This is why, for people coming into this for the first time, it's actually often coming into it for the first time looking at financial education in this way. So there's even if you never invest in crypto, you're actually learning principles that you can apply to looking at other assets as well.
100%.
So this comes back to that point around financial sovereignty and education and independence, is knowing how to improve your financial circumstances, no matter what stage of life you're at. So whether you're in a growth stage now, like myself and Sam, who are looking, to build for the future and to take care of our families, or you're at the later stage in life where you're looking to protect your assets and diversify to maximize your retirement, for instance. Now is a really good time to get educated on all of these things, because the world is changing, and the traditional financial advisors, some are awake, some are wise, others have no clue what's happening. So now is the time to start to really understand for yourself. And we're very clear. We're not financial advisors. We're never telling you to invest in, next week. We're not going to be like, buy this. So that's not our job. Our job is to give you the information, the fundamentals, so that you can start to navigate the decisions for yourself. That can be intimidating, taking that sovereignty. Freedom comes with responsibility. So that our goal is really to help you to be able to have the tools and awareness so that you can start to really see the light through the trees. That's our goal.
Yeah, absolutely, Dan. And so many of the experts of today are actually experts of yesterday, because we're in such changing times.
Yes.
And I think that's a real problem. So a lot of people who are not clear about the shifts that are going on are giving advice based on an old world. And I always say this, regardless of agendas, understand that we're in a real shift and the world is changing. Understanding that is paramount. Therefore, you can be positioned, because the people who do well are people who are able to be agile and pivot and change their behaviors, or move with the times, or ahead of the times even. And that's one of the gifts, that we have a lot of awareness of what's happening in the world. We can use that. And I think one of the biggest traps is getting stuck in old paradigms. And again, I'd argue the power structure absolutely want you stuck in old paradigms and trap you in old paradigms. That is the kind of trap. If you can get educated and get ahead of the game, and there's so much you can do, Dan. And you're absolutely right. It's funny. I get the title, "What Should I Buy?" because we want to have this conversation about there is no should, but but almost the only thing there is, that I would say is almost a should, or I do advocate for, is getting educated, because that does transform your experience and what you can do. So we're going to share lots of perspectives of how you might want to play this market, so you can make your own strong decisions about it. Good info leads you to make your own personal good decisions. And I think that's what we're going to look at, and that's what we look at every time we discuss on this show, Dan, or all the workshops. And we're going to really highlight that in more detail about the crypto market, because there is so many ways to be involved with it, and it's about you understanding ways you can be involved with it, so you can pick a way that suits absolutely you, and that will be personal. But the first step to doing that is understanding the full spectrum, and that's what we're going to look at.
Yeah, and if you can't attend live, just grab a ticket and you'll get the replay anyway. And members of the Navigating the Financial Reset program will get obviously the full vault of previous workshops as well. So we do hope to see you on the 10th. And again, that's weareelevated.org. What should you buy? So Sam, illuminating conversation to start the year. I'm feeling really optimistic and hopeful for 2024. Interesting, last night in our last workshop, we talked about kind of market sentiment for 2024. We looked at the 2023 overall outlook and what this year could look like. And it seems that the world is beginning to start to feel more optimistic financially. And, regardless of what the experts say, now is time for you to create your own reality. And I think this is what I'm excited about 2024, and getting really, really focused on building a brighter financial future for myself and my family, and educating people along the way. And one of my goals for this show later, as we move forward, Sam, is to just document and share the lessons that I'm learning. It's a new field to me, it's as much as anyone, because it's so pioneering.
Yeah.
And, I want to be able to share the lessons I'm learning and the hard knocks. We were talking about some of those before we recorded, that you have the important lessons along the journey. And that's, to me, that's something to get excited about, because
absolutely, Dan.
We live in this like safety culture in the world where we want to minimize the risk or eliminate risk. And it's just like, well, this theory of no one is safe until we're all safe came out during COVID. And it's like, that shocks me. It's like, well, goodness me, like if you want to remove all risk, get rid of all cars. Like, it's like,
it's anti-life, it's
anti-life. So let's get excited. Let's, risky is the new safe. Let's be a bit more courageous going into 2024.
Well, creative, playful, and getting out of fear is what enables you to see opportunity. There is opportunity everywhere. But the powers that be want you in fear, because when you're in fear, your mind doesn't work and you don't see opportunities, and it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So I always encourage people, it's absolutely vigilant about all the threats in the financial reset. That's what we talk about. Educate the threats of being stuck in the banks and the legacy system, but not to be stuck in fear, to actually open your eyes, get creative and playful, and see the opportunity, because it's everywhere and it's always existed. And I think that's where we can be, more captain our own ship and more in charge of our own destiny. And that's an exciting path, however it plays out, Dan. As we say, no one knows the future. No one's got a crystal ball of how it's going to play out. But it's great to be an active participant in your own, forging your own path ahead. That's what I'm really passionate about for myself and everybody I talk to.
Yes, thank you, Sam. Now, final call to action for you today is, if you haven't subscribed to the show, wherever you're watching or listening to this, if you're on YouTube, hit the subscribe button. Apple, if you want to tune into or Spotify, you want to tune into the audio version, go to your favorite podcast app and follow us on there as well. You'll get notifications of every episode. We'll be coming to every other week this year in 2024. Let us know in the comments what you thought of this episode, what questions you have. And we'll look to address those questions as we move forward on the show. So we're really excited about 2024. Sam and I are heading to Mexico for the Greater Reset event coming up in January. So you'll see some footage from us live over in Mexico as we participate in that event. And I know this type of conversation is going to be a big part of that event as well. So look forward to that. But until next time, thanks very much for being with us today. Please share this episode if you got value from this. And we will see you again very soon on the Uncharted Territory podcast.